Good evening, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about this Jorge Linares versus Devin Haney fight. Just got done watching it. Pretty decent fight, actually, when it comes down to it, which, um, well, this fight kind of lived up to my expectations when it came down to it. The fight pretty much went down as I expected. I said in my video that I was going to predict Devin Haney to win, and that, I did not think that Jorge Linares actually was going to offer him much trouble. He did offer Devin Haney a little bit of problems when it comes down to it, but I don't think that he was able to offer him much in the way of trouble. Now, a certain amount of people may disagree because there was certain moments in this fight where Devin Haney that he did get buckled or he did get hurt by Jorge Linares. But I don't necessarily think it was because Jorge Linares was really giving Devin Haney a great amount of trouble. I think it was because Devin Haney at times was not fighting his best fight, and he was trying to put on the most entertaining fight, and overall that he was trying to really get the stoppage because Devin Haney, in my opinion, he probably knew that this fight was going to be compared to the fight that Vasyl Lomachenko had against Jorge Linares over him those few years ago. Now, in my opinion, and I've said this, I thought Jorge Linares was a better fighter when he fought Vasyl Lomachenko. That's when Jorge Linares, I believe, was the Ring Magazine 135-pound champion. And the reason why I thought Devin Haney would win so dominantly, not only because Devin Haney is a decent fighter, but on top of that, I just didn't see what Jorge Linares was going to be able to do at this point in time in his career. He suffered two knockout losses in his past five fights, I believe, when it comes down to it. I just did not see him really beating a Devin Haney, even though he may be able to give him a little bit of problems here and there. So this fight pretty much went exactly as I expected. Personally, I scored it about 9 rounds to 3. The judges, interestingly enough, excuse me, they had this a little bit closer than I did. They had it 8 rounds to 4, or two of the judges had it 8 rounds to 4, and I believe there was one judge that had it 7 rounds to 5, which I'm very much surprised on that because I don't really know how you score this fight 7 rounds to 5 because I don't know how there's 5 rounds that you give the Jorge Linares, but it is what it is. That being said, I can understand 8 rounds to 4. I just personally said I scored it 9 rounds to 3. I think I gave Jorge Linares I think I gave him rounds 4, rounds 11, and rounds 12. I think overall that's the rounds that I gave him. But Devin Haney, in my opinion, he pretty much won this fight by domination, even though there were some problems that he had in this fight. But let me say this, out of all the times that I've seen Devin Haney in fights, this is actually probably the most impressed that I've ever been with him. I think in other fights that I've seen him in, he actually looked a little bit too hittable. There were certain times overall that I did not think his defense was A grade. He looked terrific in this fight. And even though I don't think that this was a Jorge Linares that, was the same fighter that maybe he was even a few years ago, when it comes down to it, Jorge Linares still was very tough in this fight. He looked in good shape. He looked to have good conditioning. The power is still there. And I know a lot of people, they're going to make, with Devin Haney, you have to be very careful. You have to rank him correctly. I say the same thing whenever I talk about Gennady Golovkin because there's going to be a certain amount of people that when you talk about Gennady Golovkin that try to basically, uplift him or overall that try to talk so great about him overall and try to, in my opinion, overrate his achievements. And there's going to be a certain amount of people with Golovkin that try to completely berate him and basically give you this spiel that he's a hype job. And we all know what type of channels do that, but it is what it is. It's kind of the same thing with Devin Haney. I see the same thing with him. Either you're gonna have people that love Devin Haney, or you're gonna have people who hate him. So it's very important to rank him correctly, logically, and objectively. And there's going to be a lot of people overall that make a very big deal about the fact that he was able to get hurt at the end of that 10th round against Jorge Linares. And overall, there's going to be a certain amount of people that say, well, he's overrated, and overall, he's not going to last against these other guys. What I'll say is this, man. Devin Haney, he does need to be careful in a certain amount of these other fights. But what I'll say is this. Devin Haney, he kind of put himself in that situation in the first place because it's very clear that he was supposed to get, or he thought that he was supposed to get the stoppage. He wanted to get the stoppage. I think overall, he wanted to get the stoppage kind of like Vasyl Lomachenko got the stoppage a couple of years ago. And overall, he wanted to have a performance against Jorge Linares like no one in recent years at least has ever had against Jorge Linares. And Devin Haney, I thought, looked very good throughout the majority of the fight, but he needed to be careful because Jorge Linares is not someone overall that you want to mess around with. Jorge Linares is a very decently tough fighter, and I've always said this about Jorge Linares. A certain amount of people, they always love to say that Jorge Linares does not have a great chin, or overall that he's very weak, yada, 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 yada. Jorge Linares has never had a bad chin. He just has a lot of scar tissue. That's what Jorge Linares has. So he's never had a bad chin. And you know how we know that? Because Devin Haney was whooping this dude's ass from round one on when it came down to it. And there were certain times overall where I thought there was a chance that the corner might even stop it from Jorge Linares' corner, because there were certain times where I thought Devin Haney was unloading on him so bad that I thought overall that Jorge Linares, that eventually he was going to go down, but it just never happened. So maybe Devin Haney, maybe he doesn't have A-grade power. Maybe he's not a Teofimo Lopez or a Gervonta Tank Davis or a Vasyl Lomachenko. And I consider all those guys A-grade punchers. Now, certain people would agree with Teofimo Lopez and Gervonta Tank Davis. They would ask on Vasyl Lomachenko why I think that. In my opinion, Vasyl Lomachenko is an A-grade puncher. He's actually a very underrated puncher. Vasyl Lomachenko actually is a very decent puncher, even for his size, because he's not a natural 135 pounder. His power actually can translate up to that weight class. But I'm not sure overall if Lomachenko can take the type of damage that some of these other 135 pounders can, because he's just not a natural guy, who really is a natural 135 pounder. So him against a Gervonta Tank Davis or a Teofimo Lopez, it may be a little bit more difficult for him to handle that type of power. I'm not saying that Lomachenko maybe would not be able to beat those guys. Maybe he would not be able to beat Teofimo Lopez in a rematch or beat Gervonta Tank Davis, but it certainly would be an uphill battle. So it is what it is. That being said, Devin Haney, I thought that he looked pretty decent throughout the fight when it came down to it. Once again, I know a lot of people, they're going to make a big deal about the fact that he was very badly hurt in the 11th round and got hurt at the end of that 10th round. There was also a decent amount of shots that I seen Devin Haney walk through in this fight. Flush shots. I seen him get hit a certain amount of the times by the left hook, by the left uppercut. Linares has a very, very great left uppercut that a lot of people actually don't know about. You can see that in the Anthony Crawler fights. All I'm going to say is this. Devin Haney at times does need to keep his right hand up a little bit more. Because I seen Jorge Linares, he was trying to go after that left hook repeatedly. Now, Devin Haney did a very good job usually moving out of the way of that. But when it comes down to it, I do think overall that, he just needs to keep that hand up just a little bit more. And I believe I seen Ben Davidson, who's a very decent trainer, I believe I seen him working on that with Devin Haney. Either way, I thought Devin Haney looked very decent in this fight. I thought that he looked very good. So hopefully he continues to good work. Now, what do I believe overall is next for Devin Haney? Well, I'm hoping that we could see a Teofimo Lopez versus Devin Haney fight. That would be a complete unification fight. And whoever were to win that fight, I would actually like to see them face Josh Taylor. That actually would be a mega fight, in my opinion. And whoever were to win that fight, that actually would make whoever is going to be the winner of that fight, some people actually may disagree with this, that might be the person who faces Terrence Crawford. And a certain amount of people overall may disagree, especially, let's say, if Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez, if they were somehow able to pull out of the fight against Josh Taylor. I'm not saying anything 100%, but that would make that fight a lot bigger between Josh Taylor or Terrence Crawford, or if there were a fight between Teofimo Lopez or Devin Haney and Terrence Crawford. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to it. Who am I favoring personally in a Devin Haney Teofimo Lopez fight, I would favor Teofimo Lopez. I think right now you have to say that he's the number one guy. And Devin Haney has to be very careful in that fight because any punch that Teofimo Lopez can land, it can very much hurt you. So he has to be very, very careful in that fight. But when it comes down to the overall, one thing I'll say is this. Before, I didn't think Devin Haney really stood much of a chance against Teofimo Lopez. I think actually I had that about an 80-20 fight in favor of Teofimo Lopez because I was never really thoroughly overly impressed with Devin Haney before this. But let me say this, I thought he looked very good in this fight, and that 80-20 chance just rose from a 60-40 chance to the point to where if Devin Haney, if he were to pull off the upset, because I do believe Teofimo Lopez would be the favorite heading into this fight if they were to fight next, I would not be surprised if Devin Haney pulled off the upset against Teofimo Lopez. I would not be surprised if he beat him if he continues to fight like that. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, hopefully we get to see a Teofimo Lopez versus Devin Haney bout in the latter part of this year. That is the complete unification fight. And a Teofimo Lopez, if he does not fight him, and I hear these bullshit excuses when it comes down to it, I will be on his ass when it comes down to it. So we'll see overall what he has to say about that. But anyways, congratulations to Devin Haney. I thought overall that he looked good in the majority of the fight. He tried a little bit too hard to get the stoppage, and that's kind of why he ended up getting hurt in some of those latter rounds. But good job on Devin Haney for being dominant in this fight. Like I said, once again, I scored it about 9-3. I thought he looked decently good. I thought he actually looked, even though obviously he had some adversity, I thought overall that he looked the best in his career that I've ever seen him. And once again, do I believe that this was a Jorge Linares that, is the same fighter necessarily, even that he was a few years ago when he was fighting Lomachenko and fighting Luke Campbell and fighting Anthony Krala? No, I don't necessarily think so, but when it comes down to it, this was a Jorge Linares who was still decently dangerous and in very decent, shape. So, Devin Haney deserves a certain amount of credit for that. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.